Heavenly Father, thank you for this class and this day. You're amazing, and Lord, even today, you have extended grace, at least to me, and I thank you for that. Thank you for your help, your guidance, your wisdom. Lord, you have all of that. More than we could have imagined, and you have purpose to extend it to us. So I pray you do that, maybe even in this class. You can help us right here. We're yours. We've been called by your name, called out of darkness. And so help us to embrace the light, Father. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay, so I want to go through a couple of things I'm going to go over these test questions. I passed out 8 and 9. Today, I passed out 7 before, and I wanted to wait because I didn't want to do the async thing. In fact, I tried to do that and I forgot to record the session because I didn't start it. So, but now it's going, so I trust it. I trust that people, I don't see anybody though. It should be sharing. Well, I assume people are watching it. Hope they are. Anyway, so I'm going to go over these questions on these 3, because some of this stuff will be on your on the exam that's happening on Wednesday, and it's happening in this class. I don't think that there's going to be anybody coming in on Wednesday after this class, so if you need more time, you'll have it. But I think everybody pretty much was out of here a good piece before the class was over, and this is about the same. This test has 3 true and false, 28 multiple choice, 5 short answer, and 3 extra credit. So that's what it contains. So I'm going to go over this. If you have 7, if you brought it, you can look at it. I'm going to touch these things so we at least have gone over once. There's I didn't know that I'd have time to do this, but there's a thing on astrology, because we're talking about the stars. I thought I'd touch on that, and I found one video I really liked, but this morning I found a better one. It lays it out better. The other one's a little more fun, but anyway, I'll do that, and so that's what we're going to do basically this time. Okay, as you see, why is our sun important to the study of astronomy? You should know this, because it's the only star close enough to permit easy study of its surface. It's the only one close enough. It's on an average of 93 million miles. So that space probe, the Parker probe, got 5 sun diameters, which I think it was 4 point something million miles. I don't remember exactly, but it was something like that. So 4 million miles, or 4+ million miles, sounds like a long way away, except when you compare it to 93 million, it's really close. And I don't know if that's all the closer it's going to get. I don't know if it's going to stay in the orbit that it's in right now, which is about that distance from the sun. But anyway, so our sun, 93 million miles. The next star is Alpha Centauri, and that's like 4.2 light years away. I think it is. It's 4.2. Let's see. Yeah, 4.24 light years. So 4.2 a year, and one light year is 5.8 trillion miles. So 5.8 trillion times 4.24, and that's the closest star to where we are. So the only star we really have to look at with approximately, and we've just gotten this space probe that close, 4-point-something million miles, which is really close, but that's why we can't, the rest of them are far away, and we've got to do some evaluation to get to where they are. This one we can study a little better. What four parts of the sun? It's the solar interior, the photosphere. The photosphere is the surface. So it's a surface, that's about 6,000 degrees. The chromosphere is the lower atmosphere, and the corona is the upper atmosphere, and these are really hard. These are millions of degrees. But as I said last time, you wouldn't feel them very much if you were just out in them alone. But the photosphere is hot enough to do damage. Crispia. So, do sharp boundaries separate these four parts? No, because the sun is gaseous. They're just, in fact, the outer planets are gaseous. So, the outer ones, as you might remember, the outer ones, the outer planets, the four Jovian planets, they tend to hold their atmosphere in because they're bigger, which means their gravity is stronger, and they're cooler, which means the molecules don't move so fast, so they can't escape. So both the size and the gravitational pull, and they're colder, they're farther away from the sun, so they're colder. So those two reasons are why the Jovian planets have denser or thicker atmospheres, okay? You might hear that again, or see it. So, what is the absorption spectrum? Determined to be the dominant elements found in the sun's surface, 90% hydrogen, close to 10% helium. Describe the area above the photosphere. So that's the chromosphere, that's directly above it, and the corona is above that. A relatively thin layer of hot incandescent gas a few thousand kilometers thick. And that's why a bright light spectrum would be what you use to study that. You can use other, but the ideal for this, because you're looking at the sun through a thin layer of hot incandescent gas, and this would look through that, the bright light spectrum. How far do spicules extend to the sun's lower atmosphere? About 6,000 miles. You don't have to know that. Saying. What constitute the solar wind? They're streams of charged particles, protons and electrons, that boil from the corona. So the corona is the outer layer. And most of you, you got extra credit if you answered this the way it says. I said, how fast does travel in miles per second? 2 people out of both classes read that. Everybody else just put what the book said. Book said, no thought. Okay, 250 to 800 kilometers. Most everybody got that far. But I was asking miles per second. So on your phones, you just got to put kilometers to miles, punch it in, you get it. It's pretty easy to do. This is about 497 miles per second. So 500 is equal to 800,000 miles per hour, but that's what I was looking for. So in these questions, I'm not tricking you. The true and false, you got to read them carefully. But I'm not putting any problems out there that are just tricks. I've had trick questions, but I personally don't trick them. I want you to know the material, but not something that's going to be so deceptive that you choke up on it. Okay, what's a heliosphere? The solar wind and the sun's magnetic field form sort of a bubble that reaches where interstellar space begins. So those two things, the solar wind and the sun's magnetic field, form the shield around our solar system that keep galactic cosmic radiation from entering. They don't stop it altogether, but a good percentage of it gets either moved to the side or bounced back. So that protects our solar system. So where does the majority of the sun's energy that reaches the earth come from? From the steady, continuous emission from the photosphere, from its surface. Why do sunspots appear dark? Because in comparison to the heat that surrounds them, they look cool. So sunspots are 2,440 degrees about Fahrenheit, but they're sitting in a pool of material that's about 6,000 degrees Fahrenheit. So they look a lot colder than, but they're not cold in that sense. How long is the sunspot cycle? 11 years. Okay, that is, you need to know that one. What effect can the solar flares have on space and Earth? And this can also apply to coronal mass ejections. They both can have some influence. Coronal mass ejections are usually larger than solar flares. They put out different stuff than solar flares do, but they can disturb the ionosphere. They can long distance radio communications. They generate the northern lights. They can disrupt electrical communications on air travel and on Earth. They can be pretty destructive. So that is number 7. So if you are reviewing number 7, if you don't have yours here, you review it, you think, I don't quite understand this, well, you can call me. I'm not going anywhere. You gotta clean my house, so after this class, I'm not going anywhere. So I'm around, and I'm happy to have you around. I'm not going far tomorrow anyway. That's my plan, as vague as it might be. Okay, now this is, I passed back to you. If you had done this, do you want to look at yours?
Sure.
Me, hand in that. So, pretty simple stuff. Rotation, revolution, primary motions of the Earth. Rotation is the Earth spinning on its axis. Revolution is what it does when it travels around the sun. What's the main result of the Earth's rotation? Day and night. I don't know the name, but yes, some people said zenith. Somebody said zenith. When has the sun reached its highest point in the sky? Well, at noon. What's it called? Somebody said, or a number of you said, solar noon. Well, a solar day is something that goes, I think, from noon to noon. It's a whole period. One student in the past put high noon. I thought that was amusing, and I give him credit for that, but basically, it's called the sun zenith. It wouldn't have been in your book. You would have had to look beyond your book. Now, there are no many questions. I mean, converting kilometers to miles, that would have taken you outside your book. Well, you could have looked at the back of the book. The computer did, but it'd be easier to get on the computer and do it. And this, you'd have to look outside, but it's the sun's zenith. That's what they call the highest point. That is one point. It's not a span, it's just one point. It's called the sun's zenith. Somebody put zenith. But that was the point. That was a big day. Solar day, from noon one day to noon the next, that's not a point. And just saying solar day, I wasn't confident. I mean, that's like saying the sun's, well, Sun seems what it was. So. How fast does your revolve around the sun? 66,000 miles per hour. Yeah. The Earth's average distance, 93 million miles. That's its average. It goes from about 94.5 to 91.5, somewhere in there, whereas the closest is 91.5, where it's the farthest 94.5, something close to that. But the average is 93 million miles. It's a long way. What causes the Earth's yearly cycle of seasons? The inclination of the Earth's axis at 23.5 degrees in respect to the plane of the ecliptic. So the plane of the ecliptic is here, and it's operating 23.5 degrees. This inclination of the Earth's axis causes the yearly cycle of seasons. So what causes the seasons? It's because it's tilted at that 23.5 degrees. Plane elliptic is an imaginary plane that connects the Earth's orbit with the celestial sphere. So the orbit, if you put it on a plane, goes like that, and we're tilted from that. The Earth is. Okay, questions? Okay. So then we'll do this one, this last one. Well, I'll just tell you, this shows the 8 parts of the moon. So in the question number 3, it says, what are the parts? Well, you start here with the new moon, where you don't see it at all, and then, because you're looking from the Earth, it's looking at the moon like this, so you don't see anything. It's like, sometimes you can see the shape, but you don't. Well, then when it's waning, it's getting thinner. When it's waxing, so it starts new, then it begins to wax, you see a crescent, then it's the first quarter, and then it's a waxing gibbous, and then it's full, and then it's a waning. So waxing is increasing in visibility, waning is decreasing. So you're waning here, you're decreasing until you get to nothing. Here you're waxing until you get to full. But there are 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 parts to that, so that's what I was looking for. And you should have been able to put the names on, at least that was number 3. What are the main contributors to the high temperatures on the moon? Well, it takes 27 1/3 days for the moon to make one rotation around the sun. So the sun is focusing on one area for a long time, and so is the lack of sun. So that's why you get a great contrast, 261 degrees to -280. So when the sun isn't setting, it's not getting any heat, it's not generating heat from itself, and so it gets very cold and it gets very hot because it's just facing the sun for a long time. The face of the moon, that's those. Waxing means it's increasing, the illumination is increasing, and waning is when it's decreasing. What are the lunar phasors result from? 2 things, the motion of the moon and the sunlight reflected from its surface. Difference between solar and lunar eclipse, I'll ask you that, but solar eclipse is the new moon lies in between the Earth and the sun. So you got the sun, the Earth, and the moon here. When the new moon is a blank one, when that is. And then the lunar eclipse is when the Earth is positioned between the sun and the moon during the full moon phase. So the new moon, you got solar eclipse, new moon moved directly between the earth and the sun. So you got sun, moon, earth, and the lunar eclipse is squared. You've got the earth position between the sun and the moon. What color is the moon? It's coppery red. You've seen it? Have you seen it? You all seen? So it is. It's really coppery red. It's really pretty. And that's because the Earth's atmosphere refracts and bends some of the larger wavelengths, the long ones, like the red ones. The red are the longest. Violet are the shortest of the visible range. So if violet is the shortest on the visible range, and violet, because the wavelength is shorter, it would be hotter than the red, because that's on the other one. So then what would be the hottest that you wouldn't see? The next hottest you would see, if you're going from violet?
Would it be gamma rays?
No, gamma rays are,
Oh, way out there.
yeah, you got
Infrared?
gamma,
Is it infrared rays?
No, that would be the other way.
Okay.
So you go from,
Ultraviolet.
yeah, you go from red to infrared. So infrared, that's what the James Webb Space Telescope is looking in the infrared range. But that would be even colder, relatively speaking, than the red, because the rays are longer. But they'd be ultraviolet. So violet it would be the hottest range in terms of heat generated. It's the shortest wavelength, and so the one that's moving toward gamma, you'd have gamma, X-rays, ultraviolet, and then you get into visible range, and when you leave the visible range, getting colder, you get the red. Well, I'm explaining that, you might find that, but I've had to process it so that I can, red, ultraviolet, more than violet, infrared, doesn't really do much for me, but it has red in it, so I know I should go in that direction. Okay. Yeah. So I'm gonna post these. Well, I don't know what I'm gonna do with those. I'm not sure yet. I'll think about what I'm gonna do. So I'm gonna talk briefly about this thing, because the video that I found it this morning. I found another one that I've seen. I've looked at it twice because I thought, well, I like this, and it is more fun. I'll post it on lessons, but this is astrology. And I don't know how many of you have looked at astrology, but some of this stuff is really fun. I mean, it's really funny. Funny is hardly, I mean, it's like, well, if we have time for both videos, I'm not showing, but anyway, astronomy is the systematic and scientific study of the heavens. That's what astronomy is. Astrology is a purported study of the effects heavenly objects have on human beings. If you read astrology, if you read your horoscope, you'll find it has to do with love life, with finances. I mean, it's killer. I mean, if it's true. And then people pay for that. People pay to talk to an astrologer that tells them. Well, the basis is simple. A person's character and destiny can be understood from the positions of sun, moon, and planets among the pattern of the stars at the moment of his or her birth. So when you're born, not the time you're born. In fact, one fellow, he'll probably repeat it here if I show you that one, that he said, as far as gravitational force, the people in your delivery room have more effect on you than the planets. And the planets have more effect. I mean, so Don't be sucked into it, I hope you won't be. But anyway, there are 12 signs. And right between, there's a 13th, wrote it down. Ophiuchus, well, Ophiucus. That is a constellation that's right between Sagittarius and Scorpio, that's out here. They left that one out. I don't know why they left it out. But the people that created this thing, at least the ones that we have a record, are sunk there, the Babylonians, a couple thousand years ago. People were looking at the stars before then, but to develop something that was relatively systematic, they have 12 houses. These are the houses, and there are 12 of these, and there's another one out here that was just omitted. It doesn't fit in with our monthly system. You don't have 13 months, you only have 12. So I don't know why they booted that, but it's actually a bigger constellation than some of these others. Some of these others, Cancer, the crab, I think they're 5 stars. It's really, how they got a crab out of there, the guy suggested that some of them maybe have been imbibing something else that caused them to see stars. Anyway. So, in other words, astrology is a pseudoscience based on the view that the stars and planets exert a strong influence on human affairs. And people have created, they're creating what they do with that. I'm gonna jump to the, did I have that? No, I didn't. Yeah, 2,300 to 3,000 years old, Babylonians divided the sky into 12 slices. Well, they missed one. And just to give you an overview, so the sun, if the sun is here and the earth is here, the sign that they're talking about is the one that is directly behind the sun. So you're on earth here, you're looking at the sun, the sign, I was born in May, so that would be, according to this thing, that would be Taurus. And so the constellation Taurus was, the sun was ahead of, or the constellation was behind the sun at that time. Well, for the last 2,000 years, since this was created, because our planet is moving, it's got this 23.5 degree angle on things, so it's called precession, and so it will traverse, I think in 26,000 years, it will traverse the whole our series of constellations. And so I was Taurus in Babylonian times when they created it, but I wouldn't be now. So when I was born, at the year I was born, it was Taurus according to this thing, but it isn't really Taurus because the earth is precessed, and so it's, I'm not sure which, let me see. I'd either be Aries or Gemini, but I wouldn't be Taurus. Because the constellations have shifted. They've shifted. I think I've read it was 72 miles a year, but I'm not sure. But that's a small amount. But over a couple thousand years, it adds up. And so you'd be in a different, if this planet existed for another 26,000 years, we would be back to where we are. And if you were the Earth looking at the sun, you would see the same constellation we do now. But over the course of that 26,000 years, we would be seeing a different constellation behind the sun. They would all shift. So we would eventually, you would have been born, if you just hung around long enough, you would have been born, your month would be a different sign all the way around the 12, well, the 13, they didn't count that other one. So, I bet that's clear as mud, but anyways. So, let me see. The constellation shift by 1 degree because of the wobbling, that's the process. So that's what it is, 1 degree every 72 years. So every 72 years it shifts a degree. So 720 years, 10 degrees. 7,020 years, 100 degrees, it'd shift. Well, that means it would be 100 degrees different in the sky from where it was. So I knew there was 72 in there somewhere. Okay, but most of the horoscopes use this old convention. And so 2,000 years ago, a person born July 28th was considered a Leo. That constellation, the sun appeared to be in front of it, but today the sun appears in front of the constellation Cancer on July 28th. So it is moved from Leo to Cancer. Okay, so I would have moved from Taurus to Aries. I mean, I gotta say, no matter what this says, May is probably the best month to be born if you have a choice, but none of us had a choice.
I don't know, October's pretty.
Sorry for anybody not born in May. So I think, I'm gonna show this thing before we get started. I thought. And the Bible does have stuff to say about it, but what I'm gonna show you,
Mr. Dawson?
yes,
So, I guess in this culture, this is a very, very popular thing in this time frame. And there are certain groups and certain people that clump together because they have the same zodiac and they act the same. But is that more so because they're brainwashed into a sense of belonging, that they think that they have to live by that because they were born that way, and then they get brainwashed into a sense of belonging? It doesn't have anything to actually do with science.
no, there is no scientific, the things they postulate of influence, like Venus has an influence on some constellation that could be, is hundreds and hundreds of light years away. Venus had nothing to do with it. The only thing that Venus has to do with is the sun. But, and if you look at horoscopes, they are purposely vague. And if you look at different horoscopes written by different people, they say different things. So there's no consistency, but there's no scientific evidence. And there's been studies, in fact, there were studies on twins back in, I don't know which video said that. They were studying, they studied 100 different twins, and they charted them, where they went, personalities, what they went through and stuff. No statistical scientific evidence that they were born the same time, the same day. But yet, much different. So, I mean, one of the Bagbies is married and the other isn't. There you go.
Possible by Class Central. You can sit in on thousands of college courses.
So I've never
by
gotten this
world-class
site
professors
before.
at the greatest universities in the world right now.
But-
By visiting the link in the description, class-central.com.
But I like how he presents it. The Scott, whoever, I don't know if it's David Park, I think it probably is, but.
Ahmed. Let's talk about astrology. In the simplest sense, astrology means the search for human meaning in the sky. Astrology is a belief system and practice which claims that the movement and positions of celestial bodies, like stars and planets and the moon, can give us answers about what's happening on Earth and can make predictions about what will happen on Earth and in human lives. Astrologers believe that the movement and positioning of celestial bodies even have an effect on human
don't trust
personalities
that guy.
and behavior. So an astrologer might assert that it wasn't a coincidence that someone died during a full moon, or that a person is likely to make good decisions in their love life this week because they were born on a certain day in March 50 years ago. The problem with astrology is common to other pseudosciences. It's not based on evidence. Astrological claims are usually not falsifiable or even testable. Astrology hasn't been proven right, but in some respects, it can't even be proven wrong, which should always be a red flag. So first of all, astrology is not to be confused with astronomy, which is the actual scientific study of celestial bodies and everything in space. Astrology holds the belief that everything happening in space has a direct causal relationship with human events. A number of ancient societies had their own versions of astrology in Mesoamerica, India, China, Greece and Rome, Babylonia, parts of the Middle East. All of these ancient civilizations and others, a long time ago, started to assign significance to the cycles and positions of celestial bodies, trying to relate them to things happening on Earth. And this
So one point about that, about talking to somebody. If you're really interested in engaging in dialogue, you don't want to just blow them off and tell them they're foolish. You don't even necessarily want to try to attack some point that you think you're strong in and they're weak in. The purpose isn't to win an argument. It's to communicate with a person. And if you can build some kind of relationship where they have confidence in you, you're more likely to be able to share something meaningful with them about Christ and the life that you can give. So it isn't arguing. Some people that go into apologetics want to be able to argue people and win. Well, that's not the point. It's not winning an argument. It's communicating with a person effectively enough so they listen to the claims of Christ. So we want to be careful. Even, I mean, it's ridiculous, but I listened to once, a young earther. So I was traveling with sing groups and was out in the parking lot and gave a track, and the guy was a young earther and his wife. So they taught, well, I didn't argue with them. I didn't disagree. I may ask some questions trying to understand what they said, but we had a great conversation. We had such a nice conversation that when I shook their hands before we parted, it was warm, and I gave them a tract. And they said they were Christians, and I gave them a tract, My Heart, Christ Home. It costs about $1.25 a piece, but when somebody is professing this tract, God's used it in my life twice to change me. And talks about, it's common, I mean, you probably heard it preached, that Christ comes to the door and comes in the room, invite him in your house, and so he's sitting in the living room, he looks around, and he's not looking for stuff to find, but he sees stuff around that isn't really appropriate. Well, you apologize and you clean it up. But he goes from room to room, you've invited him in to take over. And so he goes from room to room and he points out, he sees things. And finally, the last room in the house is his closet, and there's just a stink coming from this thing. And these are things that you just don't want to let go of. These are things for one reason or another. They could be anything. They could be a relationship. They could be a feeling towards somebody. They could be, it's not a matter of them being like a table or a chair, but they are stuff that you are just afraid to let him at, because they're dear to you for one reason or another. And he wants to have them. He wants you to give him the authority to deal with them. So, it's a great tract. My Heart, Christ Home is written in the 50s by a Presbyterian guy, imagine that. But Billy Graham used to hand these out. In fact, when I pass them out, if it's a person that is usually older than you, that would be aware of Billy Graham and his campaigns, because he used to pass these out. They weren't with this cover, but with the same thing. And he used to, when he did his crusades, he'd pass these out. I mean, they're good. My wife used them. to lead some little Native American children when she was doing a VBS in Canada to Christ. It's simple enough for that, but it has enough meat to speak to, well, God's used it to speak to me. So in engaging in somebody, I'm just saying, because this is, I mean, it's laughable, but there are some people that are really into this thing. And you can blow them off and then have no conversation with them at all. But to listen to people want to be listened to. And if you listen, it's not a trick. It's involved in ministry. You're willing to listen. I don't know, I saw a video sometime about some guy that was, he's a pastor in the state of Washington now, but he went over to England, and the guy, he went there, he thought he'd have an office, he was gonna work with a preacher there in where it was, in England, in a rural village, and he came out and met the guy and said, "Where's my office?" And the guy looked at him and said, "Well, you don't really have an office." And he said, "Well, where's your office?" And he just pointed to a phone number. And so he just sent him out to talk to the people in the village. So he did. And he got to know the people in the village, and they got to know him. You can't have a relationship unless you build something. Well, he couldn't effectively minister to the people, just coming in brand new. Well, look at me. I got a degree from Kentucky Mountain Bible College. I'm credible. Now I'm credible. I wasn't before, but now I am. Well, that's just baloney. So if you're on something other than this class on your computers, some of you are staring right at them. You're hearing me in the background on background noise. So if you're influencing the people that are next to you, don't do it, please. I appreciate it. But you just want to extend kindness, and if you pray while you're doing it for God to bring an opening, He's going to do that. I've done it, I'd say probably thousands of times in ministry. Listen to somebody that went on and on and on. And then God opened a door for me to say something. And because I'd listened and been kind and didn't roll my eyes and didn't think, oh man, that God gave an opportunity. Now those are, I guess I don't think of them so much as seeds, but I guess they could be. But I pray for people that I've witnessed to. I've got a list of them. In fact, I went over one this morning, people that years ago, that I have their names, I shared with them. It was a good time of ministry. I don't do it with everybody I give a tract to, but I still pray for them. Well, that's doing something, because I'm calling on God to do something and I'm not doing it lightly. So I just want to say this, I said more than I thought I would.
This continued throughout the Middle Ages. For most of astrology's history, astrology and astronomy were synonymous. In other words, astrology was the best astronomy humans had. During this time, it's true that accurate observations of the stars and planets, what we think of as astronomy, was the foundation of astrology. And that's still true about astrology today to some degree, but astrology and astronomy began to split apart during the 17th and 18th centuries as more modern versions of science began developing, and the supernatural claims made by astrology were challenged. So astrology was abandoned in the intellectual world, and astronomy has been firmly considered a separate, distinct discipline since the late 18th century. And this is worth noting, that the split between astrology and astronomy happened upon the emergence of the scientific method. That's not a coincidence. But it sort of makes sense that pre-science humans would think that the stars were sending them messages or influencing human affairs. Think about the last time you could see the stars clearly. It's awe-inspiring. Ancient cultures that didn't have natural explanations for what they were seeing would unsurprisingly invent their own explanations. Humans are programmed to make inferences about things they don't understand. So astrology is really just a way of thinking that is left over from outdated attempts at science. But don't get me wrong, astrology can be very intricate. It can seem scientific enough because tracking planets and constellations is something that real scientists do using complex equations and charts and a ton of math. And this is why many people are tricked into thinking astrology is science. But I could use formulas and math to track the blades of grass in a park to make predictions about the stock market. The formulas and math don't actually make it meaningful. Astrology believes the time of your birth and the position of celestial bodies at that time can determine your personality, strengths, weaknesses, compatibility with people born at other times, and more. Who you should befriend, who you should date, decisions you should make in life. And central to astrology are horoscopes, which make predictions about people's behavior and destinies based on where and when they were born, which determines what's known as their sun sign, like Virgo, Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius. We see horoscopes all over the place. Let's look at a random horoscope I found. I didn't cherry pick this. This was the first horoscope I found online. Quote, everyone looks to you for the answers today, but that doesn't rattle you at all. You're one cool customer, and nothing is going to get the better of you. Maybe it's healthy confidence or a bit of self-delusion. The reason for your grace under pressure is irrelevant. What matters is that you'll be there for the people who need you, and your actions will say everything that needs to be said. You could argue that what I just read is how most people feel on most days. The whole point is it's general enough for parts to apply to anyone and to seem relatable to anyone who reads it on any random day. There have been many experiments where a room full of people get the same horoscope, people with different astrological signs, and almost everybody in the room says the horoscope is accurate and relevant to their lives. People tend to rate claims about them as accurate if they're vague enough and if the person thinks that the claim was tailored to them. Separating the population into 12 signs that each get their own horoscope gives this illusion of a personally tailored claim. And the writers of horoscopes take advantage of what's called self-serving bias, where people agree more in general with flattering or positive descriptions of themselves or their situation. Horoscopes are rarely specific, and they almost never tell you about how horrible your day is going to be or what a bad person you are, even though bad days and bad people obviously exist. Check out your own horoscope for today on different websites and see how different they are. They're being written by people who are interpreting the sky in different ways. But even if all of the horoscopes were the same, it still wouldn't indicate that the position of the stars relative to when you were born had anything to do with what's happening in your life. And almost all modern Western astrology is derived from ancient Middle Eastern astrological traditions and involves some form of horoscope. An actual horoscope is a chart that diagrams the positions of the sun, moon, and planets and lets you track the angles that were created when you draw lines between them. You take that information and compare it to the exact time and place of a person's birth or some other event to make determinations about someone's innate characteristics or what will happen in the future. But astrology and horoscopes can get infinitely more complex and elaborate than newspaper horoscopes, depending on the astrologer. Astrologers are usually intimately familiar with astrology, and they charge people money for readings. Different astrologers have their own methods, and many astrologers claim that their methods are the right ones. Many people pay hundreds of bucks an hour to consult professional astrologers who often are also doubling as life coaches, using star and planetary charts to give advice about people's lives. There are many astrologers in the US that earn six-figure incomes. But let's ask ourselves, how could astrology even work? What bearing could the position of celestial bodies have on human affairs? Objects that are millions or even billions of miles away, how could their positions affect you at your birth, much less right now? And if you're thinking gravity, Carl Sagan once pointed out that the gravitational pull of the people in the room during your birth would affect you more than the gravitational pull of other planets in our solar system. Why don't we take into account the position of the other people who were standing in the room when you were born? Was your mom's OBGYN particularly heavy? That would have more gravitational impact than the position of a distant star or planet. And astrologers often even break things down to the hour that you were born. What what's so special about the moment that you were born? Your biology had already been developing in your mother's womb for months. None of this survives even the most basic scrutiny. Consider there being two twins born at the same time in the same place. Same planets are in the same places when they're born, the sun is in the same place. Think about how likely it is that they will lead entirely different lives, have entirely different relationships with other people, have different challenges, different goals. One might even die young while the other lives on. Astrology wouldn't have known. In 1958, British scientists registered 2,000 babies born in early March. Their development was monitored. 110 relevant variables were measured at ages 11, 16, and 23, including relationship status, IQ test scores, teacher and parent ratings of behavior, height, weight, vision, hearing, self-ratings of ability with art, music, and sports. And the study found no evidence that these people had any characteristics in common that could be statistically correlated. And why would they? According to a 2013 Harris poll, 29% of Americans say they believe in astrology, and data from the National Science Foundation suggests that the number is increasing. Ronald Reagan's chief of staff has said that Nancy Reagan cleared some decisions with her personal astrologer. Astrology can be fun, it can be entertaining if that's how we use it, but it's not based in reality, and it's not a good mechanism for making important decisions. It can give us an overly fatalistic outlook on life, when we assume that our destinies are predetermined by the time of year we were born. It can also give us false hope or an inflated sense of self or a false sense of doom. And we shouldn't ignore that it's a multi-million-dollar industry. Astrological readings are a massive waste of money. We are connected to the rest of the universe, and maybe that's what believers in astrology are recognizing. Maybe that's the principle that they're latching onto. Human bodies really are made of stardust, and that's pretty astonishing. And the sun does have a profound impact on human life. It allows life on Earth to exist with the light and the warmth that it provides. Why not just be captivated by that? But there is no evidence that we're connected to the rest of the universe in the way that astrology suggests. Given what we know about the universe today, it's actually a form of arrogance to think that humans are the focal point of the universe. It's a primitive superstition. There are plenty of mesmerizing truths about the universe and celestial bodies and how they relate to the earth and human life in ways that are scientifically justifiable. And maybe those are the facts we should be thinking about and be amazed by and fascinated with. There are already enough scientifically sound findings in physics, astronomy, and cosmology to keep us entranced by the universe and our place in it. We don't need astrology. And if you really want to learn more about the wonders of the universe, the real ones from a scientific perspective, through the disciplines of astronomy, cosmology, and physics, the best place to start is class-central.com/.
Shameless plug.
Yeah, that's right. Now, this we're just stardust. That's not accurate. I think I mentioned that before. That's Carl Sagan. He said that. That was a quote from him. They had a quote from him about the delivery room thing, and that was him being interviewed a long time ago. But Carl Sagan said that. But if you look at the Bible, that wouldn't have been true. Would have. We came after stars, but the creation of the earth came from before. And so we're from that, which precedes the stars. So stars are the same, made of the same dust that we were, I guess, would be better put. So that's what I have. It's almost the bell's gonna ring. And so you can be dismissed, and I'll see you
Class Central, let's
right here on Wednesday.